Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening episode of Pursue. Today we have Pursue 2C, which is lymph nodal pathology, and we are streaming live from Kolkata. And today we have with us Dr. Devdeep Dey, who is a senior consultant oncopathologist with Tata Medical Center, a very well-known person in oncopathology and international authority in lymph nodal pathology. And he shall be speaking today on the spectrum of high-grade B-cell lymphoma. So before I start, let me request everybody to keep your mic muted, your camera off, and please do not share your screen. With this, I would like to request Dr. Devdeep Dey to take over. Sir, please take over. Thank you so much. Please share your screen.
Good evening, Dr. Nadeem and everybody.
Just press present now. Your entire screen.
Can you see now?
It's not yet there. Let's see. Present now, entire screen, and then you press and then share. Yeah, your screen is now on its way. Yeah, I can see it now. Make it full screen. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you. Just remove that hide thing from there. That pop-up. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, please start. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Nadeem, for the kind introduction. The last time I spoke about low-grade B-cell NHL. Today, I'm going to dwell on the spectrum of high-grade B-cell NHL. So what is exactly it encompasses? High-grade B-cell NHL are a heterogeneous group of neoplasm that includes subsets of diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, Burkitt lymphoma, and lymphomas with features intermediate between diffuse large B-cell lymphoma and Burkitt lymphoma. It constitutes a group of B-cell neoplasms that are histologically characterized by proliferation of intermediate to large B cells. Mind the word intermediate to large B cells, and I'll come back to it later. And DLBCL, which is diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, is the most common non-Hodgkin lymphoma worldwide, constituting 30 to 35% of all NHLs. So you're doing your routine surgical practice, you get a lymph node which shows this sort of morphology, and your eyes light up that this is one easy case down the what you see here is very large pleomorphic cells with vesicular nuclei and prominent nucleoli and multiple mitotic figures. You think, oh, that's easy case. It's a high-grade non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So let's see what we have to do when we encounter a case like this. So the first panel that I normally do is to do a CD20, CD3, and CD30. So once the CD20 comes positive, I'm thinking about the high-grade B-cell NHL, especially with this morphology. And we also have to look for the double hit status, the triple hit status, and the Burkitt lymphomas. Now then we go into once the CD20 comes positive, so we have to go down the panel of the several markers to actually not only find out the specific subtype of high-grade B-cell NHL, but also the prognostic markers that are increasingly important in routine practice nowadays. So we start off doing CD5 and CD23. If you do if CD5 and CD23 both comes positive, you should be thinking that whether this is a case of Richter's transformation from CLL, where you don't have the prior history, whether there is a CLL or not. CD5 on its own, if it comes positive, you should think about pleomorphic mantle cell lymphoma and do the cyclin D1. CD5 positive DLBCL also has an inferior prognosis, and therefore it is imperative you incorporate that in the report that this is a DLBCL which is CD5 positive. Now, if the CD5 comes positive, then you do your cyclin D1. If cyclin D1 also comes positive along with CD5, you are thinking of a pleomorphic mantle, because remember, you looked at the very high grade morphology of cells, and that is where the pleomorphic mantle diagnosis would also come in. But if you did not look at a very high grade morphology like the previous slide, you're looking at a blastoid thing, then you do have to do your TDT to rule out a blastoid lymphoblastic lymphoma or a blastoid mantle cell lymphoma. The BCL2, the CD10, and the BCL6 are important to figure out whether this is a follicular lymphoma in transformation. The BCL2, BCL6 is also important for assessing the double hit status. The Ki67, very important to reinforce or to support your morphological impression that this is a high-grade NHL. A Ki67, when it approaches 100%, would mean that this is a case of Burkitt or a high-grade B-cell NHL, in which you should start worrying about Burkitt. MUM1 is needed for the cell of origin classification. A MUM1 positivity would indicate this is a germinal center B-cell type, and P53, as I would show later, is increasingly being used as a marker for molecular risk stratification in DLBCL. And CMYC is also important for identifying the double hit status and which cases to do FISH. Now, one thing to be aware of, that if the person has a history of lymphoma and has been treated with rituximab, they may no longer express CD20, and there you might have to do additional stains such as the PAX5, the CD79A, or CD22 to confirm the B-cell lineage of the cells. Now, CMYC along with BCL6 and BCL2 is needed to exclude the double hit status, as I will come back later. Now you get your markers, and it is CD20 positive, CD10 positive, BCL6 positive, and a MIB1 of 90-95%. There is no problem to calling it a diffuse large B-cell lymphoma with that morphology. But you should always look at what your BCL6, CD10, MUM1, and CMYC are showing. So this is a screenshot from the WHO book showing the different varieties of large B-cell lymphoma. Remember, this is not a high-grade B, this is a large B-cell lymphoma, and I'll come to that later on about why I'm stressing on this point. So as you can see, there are varieties of lymphoma. It is not possible to go through all the lymphoma within one lecture. I will pick and choose some of the varieties of lymphoma which would have a bearing on your day-to-day practice and how to solve those issues. So the lymphoma classification and diagnosis is a combination of morphology, immunophenotype, and cytogenetics. So one hand, if the morphology is showing a blastoid morphology, you have to do your TDT, which it comes positive, you go down the route of a B lymphoblastic lymphoma. If it is a blastoid looking and TDT and cyclin D1 is negative, you go down your high-grade B-cell NHL. If it looks like Burkitt, and if the same, then you do your CMYC to confirm. And if it looks like DLBCL or Burkitt, you do the various combinations of MYC, BCL2, and BCL6 to arrive at a particular diagnosis. Now, genetic studies have shown that the diffuse large B-cell lymphoma is a heterogeneous group consisting of two cells of origin. One is the germinal center B-cell origin, and one is the activated B-cell. Like the gene expression profiling studies were done on microarray, which needed fresh tissue, which is not possible in routine practice. Therefore, immunohistochemistry has been used to act as a surrogate marker for gene expression profiling studies. Most common is the Hans algorithm, which uses the CD10, BCL6, and MUM1. However, this algorithm by IHC is concordant to only with gene expression profiling studies to only about 80%. So here we have the Hans algorithm, and this is the Choi algorithm. The Hans algorithm, with the Hans algorithm, we should start doing with CD10. If it is positive in more than 30% of the cells, that is CD10, we go down straight into germinal center B cell type. But if it is negative, we do the BCL6, and which, if positive in 30% of the cases, we do the MUM1. Then the mum one, if it comes positive, we'll call it a non-GCB or the activated B cell type. If the mum1 is negative, we will call it the germinal center B cell type. And if the BCL6 is negative, we go down the route of non-GCB type. So the immunohistochemical surrogates of gene expression profiling, as I mentioned it just now, that the germinal center will have a CD10 BCL6 positive, while the non-GCB will have MUM1 positivity, and thereby enabling us to make this distinction between germinal center and non-GCB. Why is this important? It is important from the prognostic point of view because the germinal center B cell will have a better prognosis than the activated B cell type. So it is an important predictor of the prognosis of a diffuse large B cell lymphoma. But coming now to the different varieties of high-grade B cell NHL, which encompasses the HGBCL with MYC, BCL2, and BCL6 rearrangements. So I'll start off with a case which shows a 29-year-old male with complaints of severe body pain, loss of appetite, and loss of weight. He had undergone hemicolectomy for the interception at Hyderabad. Nodes was dissected and was diagnosed as diffuse large B-cell lymphoma with a Ki67 of 30%. So just remember that somewhere it might be wrong. A Ki67, normally diffuse large B-cell lymphomas will have Ki67, or the proliferation index would be more than 30%, at least in the region more than 60%. But it might be a problem with fixation that the Ki67 is not coming that high. Slides and blocks were not available, so the patient came to Tata Medical Center, where it showed that the platelets were 43,000 with a very high LDH level, and in the peripheral smear, no atypical cells or blasts were seen. However, the bone marrow trephine biopsy showed packing of the trabecular spaces by this very highly cellular tumor, which shows pleomorphic cells with vesicular nuclei looking lymphoid, and it was positive for CD20 with a Ki67 approaching almost 100%. Other markers were done, which shows it is CD10 positive, BCL6 positive, but TDT, BCL2, MUM1 was negative. So it was signed out as a high-grade B-cell NHL and not as a diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. The reason being the Ki67 was 100%, and with a BCL6 positivity and a BCL6 positivity, we must entertain a diagnosis whether it's a double hit or a triple hit at least a double hit lymphoma. So FISH was done. The FISH showed the karyotyping was done. The karyotyping showed translocation, balanced translocation between the long arm of chromosome 3, which houses the BCL6, and the long arm of chromosome 8, which houses the c-MYC gene. So there's a balanced translocation between this. So the FISH using the c-MYC break apart also showed that c-MYC gene rearrangement. Therefore, it shows BCL6 and c-MYC gene rearrangement, and it's a high-grade B-cell NHL, not looking like a Burkitt. Therefore, it is a double hit lymphoma. Now, this is another case of a high-grade B-cell NHL. This time, there is a starry sky pattern here, and the cells are medium to medium size, not as large as the previous cases. It is positive for CD20, it is positive for CD10, BCL6, and with a Ki67 approaching 100%, and a MYC which is more than 60%. At till this time, you must be thinking this could be a Burkitt lymphoma, because we have a medium-sized cells with a stereotype pattern, CD10 positive, BCL6 positive, but BCL2 came positive. So it is, although this is highly unusual for Burkitt to have a BCL2 positive, although aberrant expressions can occur. So FISH was done. So FISH showed c-MYC gene rearrangement, which is shown by the widely apart red and green signals, as in here, as in here. I have to thank Dr. Mayur Parihar for this picture. Again, another picture of the BCL2 BCL2 rearrangement by FISH. This is again widely apart to red and green signals. So this is a double hit lymphoma, which is showing BCL2 and c-MYC gene rearrangement. So what is the double hit lymphoma? It is a high-grade B-cell NHL, which is showing the co-occurrence of MYC and BCL2 or BCL6. So concomitant BCL2 and BCL6 translocations without a MYC breakpoint is not a double hit. Similarly, MYC with CCNDA1 translocation is also not a double hit. So a double hit has to be c-MYC with BCL2 and BCL6. Now, high-grade double-hit lymphomas have a GCB phenotype in 90% of the patients, but if you include the BCL6 into the definition of double-hit, more ABC phenotype patients will come under this category. Now, identifying this double-hit or triple-hit lymphoma is extremely important because the therapy in adults changes. So what in the diffuse large B-cell lymphomas, most patients get treated with R-CHOP, but in double hit and triple hit lymphomas, if the other conditions permit, they would have a much more aggressive therapy, such as a dose-adjusted EPOCH. Now, MYC is located in chromosome 8 and classically associated with Burkitt lymphoma and other high-grade B-cell NHL. It can be done by FISH, either by rearrangement or break apart, or it could be done by IHC. MYC translocation with BCL6 and or BCL2 translocations are believed to have synergistic actions in causing the aggressive behavior of high-grade B-cell NHLs. Double-hit lymphomas can show a spectrum of morphological features that includes high-grade B-cell NHL, DLBCL, and less frequently follicular lymphoma. So double-hit lymphomas, about 60% of the patients will have concurrent MYC and BCL2, 20% will have MYC and BCL6, and 20% will have all the three, which is MYC, BCL2, and BCL6, in which case it would be called a triple hit lymphoma. It is generally of the GCB type. It's BCL2 positive and it's Ki67 more than 95%. Now, what is the double hit and the double expressor? So double hit is a genetic event. So you need FISH to diagnose that. Without FISH, you can't call it a double hit. It is a genetic event diagnosed by FISH, which is associated with BCL2 or BCL6 rearrangements. Double expressor is a IHC diagnosis where an immunohistochemical expression of c-MYC and BCL2 with BCL6 is needed for a diagnosis of a double expressor lymphoma. Now, all double hit lymphomas will be double expressors. So IHCs can be used to decide which ones to FISH. So when to test for FISH? All diffuse large B cell or a high grade B cell NHL with a germinal center B cell phenotype, when the IHC shows a MYC more than 40% by IHC and BCL2 more than 50% by IHC. on with a Ki67 of more than 80%. So we will request for FISH in this stage. Now, high-grade B-cell NHS is also another category, which is a heterogeneous category of clinically aggressive mature B-cell lymphomas that lack MYC plus BCL2 and or BCL6 rearrangement. It does not fall under the category of DLBCL and Burkitt lymphoma. It shares the morphological, immunophenotypical, and genetic features of these lymphomas. So this is the new flowchart of this molecular risk stratification of diffuse large B-cell lymphoma or high-grade B-cell lymphomas. So on morphology and immunophenotype, you diagnose this, and there's a reflex FISH testing for MYC rearrangement. If it is not present, it goes into molecular standard risk. If it is present, then we go down the route of testing it for FISH for BCL2 and BCL6 rearrangements with break-apart probes, and sequencing for TP53 or P53 overexpression by IHC. So at the Tata Medical Center, we have started doing this. It's still in the early stages, but we are gradually moving into doing reflex FISH testing for every high-grade B-cell NHL. So then we subdivide a lymphoma as a molecular high risk when there is MYC translocation with BCL2, BCL6 rearrangement with either P53 overexpression or TP53 mutation by sequencing, or maybe molecular high risk. The other category is that where there is BCL2 or BCL6 but without TP53 mutation or MYC, and molecular standard risk where MYC is not present at all. So here lies the importance of different risk stratification of high-grade B-cell NHL using CMYC, using FISH, and using TP53 or P53 IHC. So we come back to that chart of high-grade or large B-cell lymphomas. As you can see here, there is no Burkitt lymphoma because technically speaking, Burkitt cells are not actually large. They are medium-sized cells. So all these are large B cells, and the cells are not large. So that is your first clue that you might be dealing with a Burkitt lymphoma. So I'll show a case. This is a 27-year-old man, HIV positive. So you see a lymph node in which there's a partial involvement by something. There is this very classical follicular lysis which happens in HIV lymphadenopathy, and this is the partial involvement by this neoplastic process, which at this power with a very typical Stary-Skies pattern, which shows stingible body macrophages engulfing the apoptotic bodies. At this power, the cells are medium-sized, multiple small nucleoli with thin rims of basophilic cytoplasm. On immunohistochemistry, the cells are strong and diffusely positive for CD20, CD3 highlighting the background T cells, CD10 positive, BCL6 positive, BCL2 negative, and with a Ki67 approaching 100%. CMYC also more than 80%. For CMYC showing again the typical rearrangement pattern, widely separate red and green signals. So IgH, MYC, and CMYC rearrangement positive, no evidence of BCL2, BCL6 rearrangement, Iberish positive. This is a classical Burkitt lymphoma. It's ticking all the boxes of Burkitt lymphoma. This is an immunodeficiency associated Burkitt. But what are the challenges of Burkitt lymphoma? So is MYC translocation specific for Burkitt? You see MYC, and can you call it Burkitt? Does MYC breakpoint negative Burkitt lymphomas exist? What are the mimics of Burkitt lymphoma? So we come to, is MYC translocation specific to Burkitt's lymphoma? It is the answer is no. It is present in 90 to 95%, even more than that, of all the Burkitt lymphoma, but it is not present in 100%. It can also be found in double hit lymphoma. That is the definition of double hit, that c-Myc along with BCL2, BCL6, 5 to 10% of de novo DLBCLs, 30 to 50% of high-grade B-cell NHLs, transformed myelomas, 50% of plasmablastic lymphomas, and transformed follicular CLL and mantle cell lymphomas and precursor B-cell lymphomas. Coming to the second question, does MYC breakpoint negative Burkitt lymphomas exist? Yes, it does. The literature has described a particular subset of MYC negative high-grade B-cell NHL sharing similarities with but not being Burkitt. In this subset of lymphomas, instead of having the MYC translocation, have a chromosome 11q alteration, which is the 11q gain or loss pattern detected on FISH. This entity is a new entity, Burkitt-like lymphoma with 11q aberration, is a newly recognized entity in the revised WHO classification of tumors of hematopoietic neoplasms. At this stage, the clinical management remains undefined, but this is work in progress. So we have to sort of wait to see what therapeutic options are available. So I'll just show you this case of the 33-year-old ileocecal mass looking very much like a Burkitt with medium-sized cells, typical location of the colon with a BCL2 negative, CD10 positive, MUM1 negative, BCL6 positive, and a Ki67 approaching 100%. So when you look at the case like this, it looks like a Burkitt. It is immunophenotypically like a Burkitt. But because it is an adult, you should always confirm it with FISH. And what did the FISH show? The FISH did not show the MYC. It showed an 11q aberration. As you can see, multiple red spots here, which shows that 11q gain, which is the hallmark of Burkitt-like lymphoma with 11q aberration. It predominantly affects the adults with a median age in the 6th decade and a male preference. It is frequently observed in immunodeficient patients, and it could be both extranodal. Compared to Burkitt, it has got a more frequent nodal involvement. They lack the MYC rearrangement, and the presence of typical 11q gain or loss pattern is a hallmark that defines this entity. There are no pathognomonic, histological, or immunohistochemical features to distinguish this entity from Burkitt lymphoma. And the useful way to detect Burkitt-like lymphoma with 11q aberration is performing FISH for all the MYC-negative high-grade B-cell NHL that otherwise resemble Burkitt lymphoma both in morphology and in phenotype. So let us go into the diagnostic algorithm of the different high-grade B-cell NHL that we'll encounter. So if it is a pediatric population with the Burkitt-like morphology, that means medium-sized cells, starry sky pattern, numerous mitotic figures with a phenotype which is CD10 positive, BCL6 positive, BCL2 negative, with a MYC of more than 80% and a Ki67 of more than 95%, you may omit FISH and you may just call it Burkitt lymphoma. But if it is an adult patient with a very similar immunophenotype and a very similar morphology of a Burkitt-like, you have to do the FISH. And if the FISH shows MYC in karyotyping with no double hit, that is no BCL2 or BCL6 rearrangement, you call it a Burkitt lymphoma. But if it is an adult with a Burkitt-like morphology, very typical of even a Burkitt immunophenotype, that is, it's CD10 positive and BCL2 negative with a Ki of more than 95% and a MYC of more than 80%. You do this. You do your FISH. The MYC is positive in the karyotyping, and there is no double hit. You call it a Burkitt. However, if the If there is no MYC, but there is an 11q abnormality, you call it Burkitt-like lymphoma with 11q abnormality. Then there is this other scenario: is it's an adult where there is it could be Burkitt like morphology, or it could be large cells, but this time with an atypical phenotype, that is CD10 negative with a BCL2 positive and MYC less than 80%, Ki67 less than 95%, and with adults where it is blastoid morphology, CD10 positive and BCL2 positive, TDT negative. Here also we will do the FISH. The FISH, if the FISH doesn't show double hit, we just call it a high-grade B-cell anemia. If the FISH shows double hit, we call it a high-grade B-cell double hit. Remember, here we are not calling it Burkitt because first thing, something is positive in addition to MYC, and also the immunophenotype does not support a Burkitt. In adults with DLBCL, we see double hit. On FISH, we'll call it high-grade B-cell NHL with double hit, and if you don't see double hit, we just call it DLBCL NOS. So that is a nutshell of the different varieties of high-grade B-cell NHLs and how do we sort them out using morphology, immunophenotype, age, and FISH. Next, we come to one of the important parameters, which is the important diagnosis, which is a T-cell histiocyte-rich large B-cell lymphoma. So this is a high-grade B-cell lymphoma. It is a very common lymphoma for misdiagnosis because people mistake these large cells to something else. So as you can see in this picture, you have very small lymphocytes, and in between there are very scattered large B cells, which have vesicular nuclei and prominent nucleoli. And remember, the CD20 pattern would be like this. There would be no confluence of CD20 cells. It would be singly scattered cells like this, and it has to be very large cells. So, although it is a very uncommon case and represents less than 5% of the cases, but most of the referral practice, I see that the T-cell histiocyte-rich large B-cell lymphoma is the common is a common lymphoma to be missed. Here, the neoplastic cells represent a minority of this minority of the cells, usually present as single cells, not forming sheets or aggregates. The background is composed of reactive T lymphocytes and histiocytes, and the background has to be diffuse. A variable pan B-cell markers has to be positive. The important thing is EMA can also be positive in 30% of the cases. CD8 plus T cells predominate over CD4 plus T cells. This is an important diagnosis. This is an important differentiating from the nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin, that CD8 positive T cells is predominating over the CD4 positive T cells. And CD21 shows loss of dendritic cell meshwork. Staining for EBER is extremely rare in T-cell-rich B-cell lymphoma. If EVV is present, you should consider a diagnosis of classical Hodgkin if CD30 is positive, or if CD30 is negative, then EVV positive DLBCL of the elderly. So another important area in which people frequently get confused is between a nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin and a T-cell rich large B-cell lymphoma. So it has to start from your this differentiating of these two entities has to start from your clinical history. So while an NLPHL would be present in between 30 to 50 years, a T-cell rich B-cell is more a disease of middle age, that is more than 50. It presents with a solitary peripheral lymphadenopathy and nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin presence with a solitary lymph node in the mainly in the neck region or in the axilla, but a T cell rich B cell would present with a multiple lymphadenopathy, including something in the within the abdomen, along with liver, spleen, and bone marrow. Neoplastic cell distribution, it will have been a diffuse pattern, while NLPHL may present in a nodular and diffuse pattern. There are 5 patterns of NLPHL which can present. Then there is BCL6, which is positive in NLPHL. It is unlikely to be a T cell rich B cell. IgD, present in 1/3 of the cases, but absent in T cell rich B. Predominant background population is B cells, while in the T cell rich B, as the name implies, it is T cell. B lymphocyte population are present in nodules, but here nodules are absent. CD8 cells predominant in T cell rich B, while CD4 cells predominant in nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin. Follicular centered T lymphocytes, as stained by CD57 or PD1, shows rosetting around the large B cells, and this is extremely rare in T cell rich B cell lymphoma. PD1 T lymphocyte rosettes are present in NLPHL, absent in T cell rich B. And follicular dendritic cell meshwork is present while it is absent in T cell rich B cell lymphoma. Next, we come into the ALK positive large B cell lymphoma. I'm particularly choosing some which has got difficulties in diagnosis, which is rare, and there is a chance of a misdiagnosis of the case. Now, this ALK positive large B cell lymphoma, as you can see, this is a story of a 73-year-old lady with a biopsy of right supraclavicular lymph node, FNSE, the first pitfall, called as a metastatic carcinoma. But what we see is the partial involvement of the lymph node, very nice follicles on this side, but here there is an involvement by something which we can't appreciate in this power. On high power, there is a sinusoidal pattern of large B cells. These cells have pleomorphic nuclei with multiple nucleoli, with moderate amounts of cytoplasm. Now, when it comes, it is negative for CD30. The occasional pale cells are the immunoblasts which are getting stained. It's negative for CD79A. It's negative for CD20. It's negative for PAX5. So at this stage, you're really struggling to find out the lineage of the cells. But it's positive for EMA. It's showing kappa light chain restriction. It's EBER negative, and ALK is showing cytoplasmic and granular staining. So it's an ALK positive large B cell lymphoma. It is a lymphoma with a plasma cell-like immunophenotype. It's positive for ALK. It's mainly present in young men, but nothing in this world is certain. Therefore, you have to keep an open mind. It may involve lymph nodes with mediastinal mass and extranodal sites such as bones, liver, bone marrow, and spleen. Most patients present with advanced stage disease. There's a sinusoidal growth pattern with large immunoblast-like cells. ALK is showing cytoplasmic granular staining. EMA is positive with cytoplasmic and membranous pattern, and BOB1 and OP2 are positive. It's characterized by the T217 translocation. CD138 and MUM1 is positive. 10 BCL6 are negative, and all the B cell markers are negative. And it can show light chain restriction. So the problem in this case is that you think it is a lymphoma, but nothing is coming positive. So at this time, you should keep in mind, do your CD30, do your EMA, and do your OP2 BOB1, or do your ALK. These are the 4 or 5 markers. Before you sort of give up, you should always do ALK, BOB1, OP2, CD138, CD30. This will sort of bail you out in several cases. Next, I want to highlight another very rare entity, but important, but very easy to misdiagnose, which is the intravascular large B cell lymphoma. So this is the case of a 74-year-old woman with complaints of hepatosplenomegaly, pancytopenia, and coagulopathy. The lab investigations at our Tata Medical Center showed a hemoglobin of 7.5, very low white cell count with a platelet of 25,000. Because of such low platelets, even a biopsy we were finding it difficult to do a biopsy. And the other problem was there was no organ to biopsy with a platelet count of 25,000. Even if the PET CT is showing an enlarged spleen, there was no way we could have done a splenic biopsy or a splenectomy to get to the bottom of this case. But a transjugular liver biopsy was done by our expert radiologist, and which shows this is the liver tissue. Within the sinusoids, you can see very occasional large cells, as you can see here, here. So this is very occasional sinusoidal large B cells in high power. This is again a large B cell, again a large cell, again a large cell. Now, these cases, as you can see, very strongly positive for CD20. Imagine looking at the size of the cells. Some more CD20 positive cells here. Ki67 within the very scanty neoplastic B cell population was high, approaching around 70%, which is also positive for BCL2. So we have a liver biopsy in which there are sinusoidal large B cells which were positive for CD20, BCL6, BCL2 with a high Ki67 and negative for all these markers. So it was diagnosed as an intravascular large B cell lymphoma in the liver. IVLBCL is characterized by proliferation of large lymphoid cells with the lumen of small blood vessels. Now, because of the relatively non-specific symptoms, because this patient presented with pancytopenia, hepatomegaly, splenomegaly, it is very difficult diagnosis to even think of. And not only that, the problem is further compounded by the fact there's no definite organ to biopsy. You don't know where to biopsy this. You don't see a particular mass. How does it present? There are two different types of clinical presentation. One is the Caucasian patients, which presents with skin and neurological symptoms. In our part of the world, it would present with liver, bone marrow, and spleen involvement, as was the case here. The lymphoma cells are situated within the small to medium-sized blood vessels and are large with round to oval-shaped nuclei, vesicular chromatin, prominent nucleoli with scant to moderate cytoplasm. It might be easily missed if you have a cursory glance of the H&E sections, but if you do your markers, especially the B cell markers, it will highlight the large cells within the sinusoids of the liver. Next, we come into the primary effusion lymphoma. This is one of the cases where a lymphoma can be diagnosed, as the name suggests, on cytology. So this is very rarely do we diagnose lymphomas on cytology, but this is a case in which you have to diagnose it on cytology because there is no other way you can diagnose that. So at this power, we see very large pleomorphic cells with vesicular nuclei, along with high mitosis and apoptotic bodies. Now, this is a CD20 cytokeratin melanin negative, CD3 negative, occasional cell CD30 positive, and MUM1 is also positive. HHV8 is now positive, so this is a primary effusion lymphoma. So as the name suggests, it is a neoplasm involving the pleural, pericardial, or peritoneal cavities without forming a mass. And this is an HHV8-driven neoplasm. Normally, it presents with immunosuppression, and most patients are HIV positive. The lymphoma cells are positive for HHV8, and it's also positive for MUM1 and CD38, CD45, and CD138. So when you see that nothing is coming positive, you should entertain this diagnosis of primary effusion lymphoma, ALK-positive large B-cell lymphoma, and do your MUM1 and other markers. Next comes the primary mediastinal thymic large B-cell lymphoma. So this is a mature, aggressive, large B-cell lymphoma of thymic B-cell origin arising in the mediastinum, presence in young adults with a female preponderance. So whenever a biopsy comes to you with a mediastinal mass, 23-year-old female, start thinking whether I'm dealing with a mediastinal large B-cell lymphoma. Sometimes it may not come as a mediastinum. It might come as a lung biopsy. It might come as a pleural and pericardial biopsy because that is where it might have infiltrated. Sometimes there is involvement of supraclavicular and cervical lymph node, and bone marrow involvement is usually absent. So the two things that is very important is these cells with very clear cytoplasm along with this compartmentalization or fibrosis of the cells that will indicate that this could be a case of mediastinal large B-cell lymphoma. And again, it would be high-grade cells, so there's no problem with that. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is it has to be positive for CD20. There is CD23 positive and CD30 positive. Now, normally, as I said, that you have to do the entire panel. So if you miss morphologically, you can pick it up on IHC. So your CD23 positivity and your CD30 positivity or your MUM1 positivity can indicate to you that this could be a primary mediastinal large B-cell lymphoma. Again, it has got therapeutic implications because you can treat it with dose-adjusted epoch. So the neoplastic cells are present in a diffuse or cluster distribution, and it is normally more numerous than the classic Hodgkin lymphoma, which is one of the main differential diagnoses here. And the two things that, as I said, is clear cell change due to the abundant pale cytoplasm and prominent sclerosis, which morphologically gives you the clues that we might be dealing with a primary mediastinal large B-cell lymphomas. Then we come to the mediastinal gray zone lymphomas. I'll discuss it more when I'm doing the Hodgkin lymphoma, but this is one of the B-cell lymphomas with features which is intermediate between diffuse large B-cell and classic Hodgkin. Again, this presents with a mediastinal mass with or without involvement of supraclavicular lymph nodes. So while primary mediastinal large B-cell is more common in young women, this one is more common in young men with similar age bracket. So the most frequent histological finding is a variation in microscopic appearance. So some areas will look like classical Hodgkin lymphoma, and some areas will look like primary mediastinal large B-cell lymphoma. So you would find it difficult to decide which way you are going morphologically. What you will get is sheets of cells with pleomorphism, clear cytoplasm, and sclerosis. And diagnosis, particularly in core needle biopsies, is challenging and not recommended. So the cells express CD45, but the most important thing that will help you is that the immunophenotype of the cells will not match with the morphology. So cells will look like classic Hodgkin, but you have a strong and uniform positivity of CD20 and CD79A. Now remember one thing, some people have this misconception that Hodgkin cannot be CD20 positive. Hodgkin will have CD20 positive cells, but it would be weak and it would be heterogeneous. When you have a Hodgkin-like cell having a strong and uniform positivity of CD20, you should think about whether you're dealing with mediastinal gray zone lymphoma. Then do your CD79A, because normally Hodgkin's will be negative for that, but if it is a gray zone, it will be positive. Cells might not look like Hodgkin, but can show the classical Hodgkin lymphoma immunophenotype. They would be CD30 positive and 15 positive. Other markers that might help is PAX5, OCT2, BOB1, but in real life, I've seen it is very difficult to pick those one up. So although both mediastinal gray zone lymphoma and primary mediastinal large B-cell lymphoma usually express CD30, co-expression of CD15 or when associated with CD20 loss favors the diagnosis of gray zone. So CD30 plus CD15, think of Hodgkin. CD30 with or with CD20 loss will favor a diagnosis of gray zone lymphoma. So next we come into this case because I want to highlight one important aspect. This is a 12-year-old boy with a duodenal polyp, came to us with a diagnosis of Burkitt's lymphoma. Very obvious GI origin, and with a 12-year boil, very typical starry sky pattern as you can see here, and diffuse sheets of cells, very pleomorphic vesicular nuclei, multiple nucleoli, but some seem to have a little bit more cytoplasm than I normally expected. So I sort of thought that this might be dealing with something. And so CK is negative, CD20 and CD3 is negative. So when you get a CD20 and CD3 negative in a 12-year-old, your options get a bit limited because you're not thinking of the other diagnoses that you normally get in adult life. But MUM1 is positive, PAX5 is negative, so we almost cannot confirm a B-cell lineage here. I mean, it's not the mature B. Now CD10 was positive, as you can see here, and CB138 was strong and diffusely positive. Kappa showed light chain restriction, Ki67 approaching 100%. So this is a case of plasmablastic lymphoma, extremely rare in a setting of a 12-year-old, but there you go. You get this case came to us with a diagnosis of Burkitt's lymphoma, despite the fact that the hospital did a IHC which was CD20 and reported it as CD20 negative, which it was, and it was CD79A negative, but still called it a large B-cell lymphoma. So this is a neoplasm composed of immunoblastic or plasmablastic cells with the CD20 negative plasmacytic phenotype in diffuse pattern. Now, these are mainly seen in HIV population, and approximately 3% of HIV-related lymphomas. Oral cavity, nasal cavity, and GI tract are the frequent areas where it is normally found. Patients with oral presentation are usually HIV positive. Lymph node involvement occurs in approximately 70% of the cases. Now, as I showed you, there may or may not be plasmablastic differentiation. So the important point here is the immunoblastic cells. It might be immunoblast or plasmablastic cells. The immunoblastic cells will have prominent central nucleoli with moderate cytoplasm, while plasmacytic cells will have abundant cytoplasm with eccentrically located nuclei. It will have a starry sky pattern, necrosis, high mitotic rate, and things that are normally associated with high-grade B-cell NHL. But it would be positive for MUM1, CD138, which will enable you to make the diagnosis of a plasmablastic neoplasm. Now, a plasma cell myeloma will have a similar immunophenotype like a plasmablastic lymphoma. That is, they would be CD138 positive and MUM1 positive. Some people say CD56 might help. If CD56 is positive, it favors a plasma cell myeloma with the plasmablastic morphology. But in other places, in real life, it does not help that much. The only thing that probably helps is an Iber-ish. But in Iber-ish is positive in plasmablastic lymphomas, which it was in this case, but it is only positive in 70% of the cases. In the rest 30% of the cases, you will not have anything to depend to differentiate between these two entities. So at that time, you can sign off your report as a plasmablastic neoplasm. So if there is lymphadenopathy, that favors a plasmablastic lymphoma, and if there are features of myeloma, then that favors a plasmablastic plasma cell myeloma with a plasmablastic morphology. So to conclude, there are certain pitfalls to all these huge things that you can encounter. Fixation is the key. Now, a cell size, when it is adequately fixed, might be very large, but if it is not fixed, it might be very small. So the nuclear irregularity and the variation in cell size and shape may be due to the processing artifacts, thereby causing difficulty with your morphological interpretation. It will also create problems for your Ki-67. So it is imperative that if you are working in your hospital, at least fix well, even if you do not have the immunomarkers, fix well so that the other person can do the markers well. Now, the other problem that might happen is that you can have a Burkitt-like morphology, but it can have a weak BCL2 expression, negative CD10 or CD5 expression can happen, but you still have that will not rule out Burkitt if you have your Ki and the MYC positivity that can happen in Burkitt. The other problem that can happen is an aberrant IHC expression. So suppose you are doing that duodenal polyp in the 12-year-old where you do your CD20 and CD3. The CD3 comes positive and you call it a T-cell lymphoma because CD3 can only happen in T-cell lymphomas. But remember, plasmablastic lymphomas can have an aberrant expression of CD3. So this is the diagnostic pitfall one has to be aware of. So to conclude, attention to the cytology of the cells and overall morphology is the clue. The entire IHC panel of CD23 BCL2 has to be done because each one has its significance, whether in prognosis, whether in double hit, triple hit, whether in cell of origin classification, whether in ruling out a blastoid or a pleomorphic mantle, or whether giving you clues when the Ki-67 is high, where the c-MYC is high, that you could be dealing with a Burkitt lymphoma. There are several entities, and every time the WHO publishes a book, there are new entities which are coming in. So you have to be aware of an entity when you're dealing with the cases like this. You have to have a low threshold for performing FISH studies, especially when in this age where precision is the key. c-MYC positivity along with 11q abnormality being the notable things that one has to be aware of. And one will have to be very fast with your diagnosis because particularly in the pediatric setting, the clinical team will need a diagnosis within 1 or 2 days, and that is not a morphological diagnosis, that has to be a immunohistochemical diagnosis, because if you delay it, a Burkitt lymphoma will kill the patient. So all this subtyping classification is important because particularly in adults, it has got huge treatment implications. So with these few words, I conclude my speech. Thank you for a patient hearing. I'd like to acknowledge the following people from whom I've learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Devdeep. Excellent presentation. A very, very vast subject, and you have really dealt with it very nicely. And it is true that the fixation, which is something which we give least importance, is the most important key in all the activity, not only for the primary user, but also for the secondary user who is probably being asked to give a consult on that. And indeed, a turnaround time in pediatric lymphomas is the key because that can save the patient. Thank you so much for